Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michael Freeston, Director of Quality Improvement at the Preschool Learning Alliance, and I am joined today by Melanie Pilcher, Quality and Standards Manager.
Good afternoon, everybody.
For today's session, the essential importance of physical activity in the early years, one of the series of our Smart PD webinars. My role today is to act as chair and to take any questions from members of the audience. Mel is leading on the session and will direct conversations, and I will try and feed the questions into her at a suitable point without breaking her train too much. For those of you who are seasoned webinar attendees, you'll know that we record these sessions and we make them available on the Preschool Learning Alliance's YouTube site. One development we are introducing from today, and Mel will talk about this as we go through the process, is that there is available for purchase a resource pack to support this session that would allow managers or room leaders to have a resource which will accompany the recorded webinar that they can then use with their staff to consider the implications for their practice. As I say, we will get more information, Mel will provide more information as we talk through, and we'll take it on from there. Without further ado then, I will hand over to Melanie to take us through this through the process. After I give you a brief introduction, sorry, my mistake, about the structure of the sessions. For those of you who've attended before with us, don't be scared about the title of a webinar if you're new to the process. It is basically the same as a seminar, but instead of attending in a classroom or in a village hall, you are attending on the web. We will do a 15 to 20 minute presentation, and then we do allow 15 to 20, 30 minutes for questions and comments. But as those of you who've attended before will know, the best way is to just write your questions in a box or any comments you have as they come to you through the presentation, and it makes for a far better dialogue and allows it to be a dynamic session between us as presenters and you as the audience. If you wish to make a comment, you should see on your screen the little box which just offers you to type a question. We don't check your grammar or your spelling. Don't feel as though we would check your punctuation. Just as long as you get your basic message of your question across, we will weave it into the conversation.
We are well versed in text.
We are, yes. So, and I'll now hand over to Melanie to take us through the process.
Thank you, Michael. This is a subject that I'm becoming increasingly interested and increasingly passionate about, and the main reason for that is that actually we take physical activity for granted in young children, and it's only really been in recent years that public health has actually started including early years age group in guidance that they've been issuing. So what I wanted to do today was try and inspire you to think more about physical activity and physical exercise and what this looks like in your setting, and hence the idea of developing a resource pack that you can use half an hour with in a staff team meeting to run through this, and then give you some extra resources to use to actually help you to audit the quality of your physical activity in your setting. So what we're going to look at today then is why it matters, the importance of getting the balance right, and then I'm going to introduce you to something called the ABC of physical literacy. If anybody wants to have a guess at what they think that might mean before we get to the slide, I'd be interested to see what you come up with, and how we can make the best use of outdoors for physical activity, because acknowledging that it's not just outdoors, it is indoors as well, but primarily the bulk of physical exercise and activity does tend to happen outdoors. And I think we have to start with some facts and some figures, and the most recent report that came out from Public Health actually stated that 76% of hospital admissions in under fives are as a result of accidents in the home. And I was thinking about that this morning on the train, and I'm thinking, is that because we don't let children outdoors anymore, yes. Really? So, and it just reminded me, I had two younger brothers who were both hospitalised at different points in their early years for falling out of trees, and in one unfortunate case being run over by a donkey, which was being ridden by me.
Outdoors.
Outdoors, yes, yes. And, you know, so however we look at that, whether this is just a case of we actually don't let children out as much as we used to, this is certainly having an impact on children's health and development. 28% of girls and 22% of boys aged 2 to 10 are obese, and that's a figure that's doubled and will increase again. We don't see a decline in those figures at all. 52% of children walk to school. For their parents it's 77%, and again that figure is declining all the time. And I mentioned before about hospital admissions. 1,067 children admitted to hospital after falling out of a tree, but more than twice that number were admitted for falling off or out of bed.
Really?
Yes. And again, my interpretation of that is children don't know how to fall over. They don't know how to land anymore. So one of the most common injuries that we see with children being admitted to hospital is actually broken collarbones, because they don't know how to land.
Falling onto their shoulders,
yes,
rather
yes.
than on through their knees.
Yeah.
Down through the, yes.
So I think it's really, really sad that children are more likely to roll off a sofa than they are down a hill nowadays. So those are things that certainly inspire me and really get me going. More facts and figures, and this one is really frightening. Today's child has a lower life expectancy than that of their parents for the first time in history.
That is astonishing. I've heard that before, and if you just stop to reflect on that for a few seconds, throughout history, life expectancy has been expected to continue as we got healthier. If that has reached a tipping point and is moving the other way, that really is quite a turning point for humanity.
Especially when you think of how children were treated in even as early as Victorian times, when children were sent into workhouses and died at a very low life expectancy. This is a really frightening fact. We know that today's child has a more sedentary lifestyle, and some of this can come down to the way families spend their leisure time, and to a lesser extent the increased use of ICT.
I'm sure we will get questions on that. Does this mean tablets are to blame?
They're not to blame, no. I think this is about choices, isn't it? And it's about balance as well. So, I'd be interested to hear your views on that out there, please. Do type in. There is little need to challenge ourselves anymore. Our basic needs are primarily met, aren't they? With food, warmth, shelter, things that might have driven you outside and challenged you physically in the past. We don't need to do so much anymore. And certainly today's parent is risk averse. I've got grandchildren and a son who's very risk averse with regards to his daughters. He's got 4 daughters. And on the other hand, I've got a daughter whose children are very free range. And just seeing the difference in attitude about how parents have this attitude of wanting to protect their children, of course they do, but it is stopping us from doing so much. And I would say as well that today's provider is risk averse.
Are you challenging us on that, or do you have evidence to that?
I only have my own evidence on that, but I do believe that providers now are so worried about getting into trouble with Ofsted or with parents. When I talk about having trees in the garden so that children can climb trees outdoors, people say, oh no, we couldn't possibly do that because Ofsted wouldn't like it. So I do feel there is that element of we might get into trouble.
On that point, I have the question in from Sarah, and it links those 2 points. We would do more physically challenging activity with our children, but we know some of our parents won't like it. They don't want to collect overtired children at the end of the day who might be messy.
Yeah, I've heard that before many times, and certainly previously as a nursery manager, parents who saying, they're coming home from nursery, they're tired, they're grumpy, I don't get quality time with them. I think what we need to do here is to really dig deep and identify what parents' concerns are in the first place. Is it that they're really worried about their children being overtired? Is it that they're worried about them hurting themselves? So we need to talk to parents in the first place. We need to involve parents. We need to find out what children are doing at home. Do they go to dance club, gym club? Do they go swimming? Do they go rock climbing at their leisure centre? And try in some way to replicate some of the things that children are already doing and take ideas from other parents as well. We need to educate parents. We need them to realise how physical activity supports their child's learning and development in all areas, because it does. And the other thing to reassure parents as well is that actually it's better to have short bursts of activity throughout the day. Children are less likely to get physically tired if we're having short 10-minute bursts of really good quality, glowing faces, physical activity happening throughout the day.
And just as a personal reflection, I remember a colleague who visited Scandinavian countries, I know we always quote them, and one of the managers they met basically made it the selling point. You will pick up your child exhausted.
Yes.
It was seen as the positive, rather than the way Sarah has suggested it, that somehow parents feel as though that's going to cause them behaviour issues when they get them home.
It is interesting, isn't it? You do get the parents that will say, please tire them out before they come home. Yeah. And then you will get the parents that say, do you know what, when they're tired, they're cranky, they're difficult. So, okay. So if we just move on then, it matters. It's in the EYFS. Physical development involves providing opportunities. So I've highlighted a few words there. Opportunities for young children to be active and interactive. And this helps to develop their coordination, their control and movement. And children must also be helped to understand the importance of physical activity. And one of the main ways we do that, of course, is by making it the norm for them. So as I mentioned before, it's not just about the outdoors, and whilst we mustn't lose sight of the opportunities that the indoor environment presents to us, what I've heard directly from Ofsted is that the sector has got much better at outdoors in terms of learning opportunities, but what we're now not doing, and what Ofsted are going to start digging deeper at, is looking at the physicality of outdoors.
That's interesting. Can I just pick up on that? Because one of the challenges from Ofsted from 2008 with the earlier iterations of the earliest foundation stage was a concern that outside was rest time and wasn't engaging as much in terms of the children's learning and development, and it was seen as though it was activity for the children and a rest time for the adults. Has that changed from what Ofsted say now? Your point that we're better at doing the learning activity.
We're certainly better at doing the learning, we're better at practitioner engagement outdoors, but again it is that physical exercise, and I've got, I think it might be on the next slide, but no, we'll hold on for a moment, but I've got some slides with some quotes from Ofsted of what it is they're actually picking up on at the moment. And as I said, I've spoken directly to Ofsted, and they've said this is about children's opportunity to exercise and be active. I think we've just gone a little bit too far the other way. I certainly, I'm in and out of a lot of settings, and I certainly don't see an outdoor environment that truly addresses this idea of children being able to be really physical and being able to get exercise. So one of the things that I've started to think about and trying to get people to do is to think about how active are your children? Can they climb, run freely? Can they balance, crawl, jump? Do they come in from outdoors glowing? I mentioned that earlier, but that lovely idea of those rosy little faces coming in from outdoors, and they're all chattering away, excited and ready to do something else. How interactive are children when they're outdoors? Can they get dirt under their fingernails? Can they find something they didn't know was there? Can they organise the outdoor environment to suit their play needs, to suit their exercise needs? And are they able to use tools? Are they able to take any risk? And I mentioned earlier about risk. And risk is an important part of physical development, because we need to be able to challenge our bodies to know our body's limitations as well. So if we can just move on, Michael.
Oh, sorry,
yes.
I'm on the wrong slide.
No.
Are you setting us the question?
Oh yes, I am indeed. I'm sorry, Michael.
I only spotted it because Abida and Sarah have got down the page earlier than us, and they've suggested Abida's gone for 2 hours, Sarah 4, James just come in with 3 hours, Mina 3. My 3 is my
Yes, you're right, Michael.
Yes.
3 hours of physical exercise, and that is good quality, pumping the blood around the body, getting the lungs going. That's good quality physical exercise.
I'm just thinking that through in terms of the child's day. If we were in a sessional preschool, for example, which only operated for 3 hours a day, you'd need to know what the child's activity levels are outside of that environment, wouldn't you? Otherwise, you'd be chasing them around all day in the setting.
And this is something that I think we don't we do a lot of work on finding out about children, doing the all about me, finding out about what's happening at home, and I do think that we need to be a little bit more specific about trying to find out what leisure time is like for a child, what activities they partake in already. And just to remain on this slide as well, the guidance actually says that children who are capable of walking unaided should be physically active for at least 180 minutes, spread throughout the day. So, you know, obviously if you've got a 3-hour session, you're not going to get out there and run around for 3 hours. And I mentioned earlier that early years is an age group that was never previously included in public health guidance. And what we tend to do is we open the doors of our nurseries now to the outdoor area, and we call that free flow, which it isn't really, it's free access to outdoors, but it's not enough. So if we can move on, as always, I had a little look at what Ofsted are saying, what they're picking up on as well, and the comments in red are the negative. These were from 2 settings that are inadequate, and obviously they're inadequate in other areas as well, but these were the ones that I picked up on that were repeated over and over again, about children not having daily opportunities to play outside in fresh air and develop their physical skills. So even if you have a wonderful outdoor learning environment, those children might not necessarily, and this is what Ofsted seem to be hinting at, is they're not getting that physicality out there. And the second one, which is quite a regular one as well, is that it's the babies that are missing out as well, because babes either have to share an outdoor environment that's actually geared up more for older children, and also practitioners don't always realise that babies need to be out there and moving around and you know, crawling, jumping, whatever they're capable of doing. And then 2 outstanding settings, I like this, the highly impressive and constantly evolving outside play spaces give children daily opportunities to exercise and practice their physical skills. So there we've got something that's above and beyond. As we know, outstanding is that above and beyond what we'd expect, constantly evolving. Daily opportunities to exercise and practice their physical skills, you know, and I can almost imagine in my mind what that outdoor area is like. It's got space, it's got opportunities to be changed around, it's inviting children to go out there and play. And then the other one, excellent opportunities to participate in rigorous outdoor healthy exercise. And again, that word rigorous healthy exercise is telling me that it's more than children just running around, it's more than just putting the bikes out and the balls out and playing for a while. Okay. Oh, now, I found this, it was typical of, and I found it on a very generic sort of photograph website, you know, just looking for children's outdoor play areas. And this is a nice area for children, it's got lots of resources. They're all clean and they're safe, it's got an artificial surface, so everything looks very nice. And I must say, this is quite typical of what I do see on my travels.
I'm grimacing, I have to say, for those of you who can't see it.
So let's look at it together now.
It's plastic and shiny.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, looks very nice on a brochure, you know, but actually it doesn't.
No natural materials?
Nothing. So let's look at it together. Let's really dig down and think about this. So the first question I ask is, well, what is the range of movement that children are going to use in this garden? There's lots of climbing, but it's not too high. There's some sliding, but not too far. Have you ever seen how frustrated a 3-year-old looks when they get to the top of that ladder and before they can blink an eye, they're at the bottom? There's a little bit of clambering through, but it's always the same thing. There's some running around could happen, but there's not really enough space because you're going to keep bumping into one of these big plastic structures. There's no sensory stimulation there at all. It's plastic grass, it's a plastic equipment, it's a very artificial environment. It's too similar. The equipment out there is too similar, isn't it, when you think about what you can actually do on that equipment. So whose agenda is that outdoor space? It's certainly not the child's, is it?
No, certainly not. And I think this is a good point to just feed in the question that Mina sent slightly earlier, picking up on the point you said about physical exercise supporting cognitive development, using this image here. Do you mind explaining that a bit more?
Well, funnily enough, on the next slide we are going to look at that in more detail, but certainly, and this is very much on some of the initial reading that I've been done, so this isn't terribly evidence-based, but let's think about it for a minute. Physical exercise gets the heart going, gets the blood pumping around the body, more blood and oxygen fed to the brain makes the brain work better. Children who have had good quality physical exercise, it helps them to concentrate and stimulates their thinking when they are indoors. And active physical play also promotes children's imagination and their thinking and their reasoning. And that takes us really nicely onto the next slide, where I want to introduce you to the ABCs. Did anybody actually think what the ABCs might mean? No?
Anything but Chardonnay was the...
Anything but Chardonnay.
Sorry, not helpful.
Brilliant. We all know where your mind's going then with that. Okay, agility, balance and coordination. I really like this because this is about physical literacy. This is sometimes described as physical literacy, and these are foundations of children's physical development, and as such they should be planned for, they should be observed, and they should be given the same priority as other prime areas of learning and development. So just to break it down a little bit, agility, this is about locomotion and movement. This is about children being able to judge distance and work out the amount of force required to cause a movement. These are skills that are also needed for other areas of learning and development, and I want to start doing a lot more work on this, but these are the things that came to my mind. Maths, science, writing, painting, drawing, these are all skills that actually require agility.
I've been wondering where to put this question.
Yes.
It came in from Nikki, and I think it relates back to the reference you had under public health in terms of the children who can walk unaided. She's asked, we have some children who have mobility problems. How can we ensure that they are getting a good level of physical exercise, linking back to your ABC?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Nikki. Thank you. Certainly even children who are disabled or have limited mobility can and should have the same opportunity to take part. So it's about thinking about what the child can manage and what reasonable adjustments are that you can make to ensure that that child is involved. It's about involving parents, it's about involving any other professionals that might be involved with the child to actually think about how you can put together a programme of physical activity that is suitable for that child. And I think the other thing is with this is that we're all role modelling this as well, and actually thinking sometimes it's easier, especially with a child that's got a disability, a mobility issue, is to actually think about ways to protect them rather than ways to enable them to take those risks and to take part in the same way.
So the role of the key person and the relationship with family is essential.
It's to looking at what they can manage rather than what they must avoid doing. So moving on with the agility, balance and coordination, those ABCs. Balance is important because it supports our core strength, or is supported by our core strength, but that also requires judgment, and again these are skills that are needed to support a child's decision making and other cognitive skills. As is being able to coordinate our movements, which is the C in the ABC, our movements to work and control our bodies, and that's about cognitive skills, working with our physical skills, being able to judge weight, distance, speed, time, to be able to assess and process information and to know our limits. And I just can't get across strongly enough that the ABCs, the physical literacy, needs to be nurtured and needs to be practiced in the same way as those other prime areas of learning, such as reading and writing. If we had more time, I could really go into ways that physical literacy supports the characteristics of effective learning as well, but maybe that's perhaps another webinar topic in the future. Okay, thank you, Michael. So what can you do now? Okay, so obviously the first thing we've got to do is to recognise that we need to recognise the opportunities for physical exercise and the need for physical exercise. And one interesting thing I did with a group, I went to speak at a conference recently, and I asked them to think about all the different ways that children move, all the different ways that children run, crawl, climb, swing, balance and so on. We came up with a list of, well, I've got a few of them there, about 30 different locomotion movements that we could actually think about. So thinking about, talking to your staff, thinking about the ways in which children need to be able to move around, and does your outdoor environment, does your indoor environment actually facilitate or limit that? Are your children getting access or exercise? Access to outdoors is very different to getting real good quality exercise outdoors. How inviting is your outdoor area? Going back to that picture of our lovely plastic environment there, it all looked very nice and very colourful, but actually there was no stimulation there, there was no challenge.
And very closed. You could only do one thing with each resource.
So standing back and looking at your outdoor environment, go and open the door now if it's not raining, stand outside and think about, can children climb, can they run, can they balance, can they swing, can they wade, crawl, jump, roll, leap, ride, slither, slide, paddle. That was another one somebody threw in. I thought, well, fair enough. Any other locomotion that you can think of that would happen indoors or outdoors? And another one there, do practitioners join in? Or do they end up sort of facilitating and instructing children rather than actually joining in with them? We are role models, we have to lead by example. And even asking that question, when your children come in from outside, are they gluing? You know, it's as simple as that. I went to visit a nursery recently where they showed me their outdoor area, and it actually was a corridor that was annexed to the building with a roof across the top, and the children were able to go up and down on cycles, and the manager explained to me, well, this is all that we can do. This is the only way we can get them to exercise is on bikes going up and down, and we actually had quite a long conversation about how that might change. One of the things that I put into my resource pack just to tempt people is I put together an audit for you, a physical activity audit, and you know it's really challenging. I've tested it out on a few people and it's really challenging. So, okay. We've got a little bit here about future developments, and as I mentioned earlier, there is a webinar resource pack to support this presentation, and we'll give you details of how you can get that in a moment. And one of the things that I put in there is a copy of the slides, and what we'll do with future webinars is rather than just having them for you to watch again on YouTube, is actually giving you a CPD activity to do with your staff in 20 minutes to half an hour in a team meeting. This is just about stimulating people to find out more and to make change. I've included the audit that I've talked about, and then I've included an action plan for you as well, so how you can make those changes. And I've also put in there, because that's the thing that everybody says, well, is this linked to Ofsted? What will Ofsted think of this if we do all this, if we take all this time and trouble? So I've actually linked it to EYFS and Ofsted inspection criteria.
Thank you.
And I think Michael's going to tell you now how you can actually access that.
Yes. The easiest way to do so is to register interest by sending an email to us at training.centre@pre-school.org.uk and put in the subject box, please, physical activity webinars, so that the team at the training centre have an instant access to what it's interested in. Also, if you wouldn't mind putting your contact details in there, just in case we need to contact you via phone for any further matters, that would be helpful. And the price of the resource pack is £15 to members and £20 to non-members, which, just from the conversation that I had with Mel in terms of the resources that are included, I would argue is a very strong value indeed. Further information, Mel, as well.
Yes. Just a couple of websites here that are particularly helpful. The Forest Schools Association, for those of you that want to develop your outdoor area and give children more opportunity outdoors, will have a list of training providers and a lot of background information to forest schools, of which Michael knows I'm a huge advocate. The British Heart Foundation have created some fantastic resources free of charge, which you can download on their website. I've got one of them with me now, which is Early Years Practical Strategies for Promoting Physical Activity. And the National Trust website, of course, 30 things children should do this summer, you know, brilliant things like pond dipping, like rolling down a hill. I'm on number 15 already, so it's working for me. And just finally, what I will say, that Under 5 will be dropping on your mats any day now, if it hasn't already. And actually, I've written an article for Under 5 this time, which actually supports what's in today's webinar as well. And that's it from me, Michael.
Thank you, Melanie. It's fascinating. For those of you who are seasoned webinar attenders, you know that what generally happens is now I waffle on for a few minutes whilst colleagues have an opportunity to write any further questions. I'll ask this, but it's coming from Bridget, Melanie.
Yes.
What's your views on setting up fully outdoor nurseries?
Yes, please. There are some already. And what a wonderful way to engage children, all areas of learning and development, and to engage them physically and cognitively. Brilliant examples, again going back to Scandinavia, where I've read an article actually where a man was questioning the owner of an outdoor nursery and saying, but you have no fences. And the response was, well, why would the children want to run away?
Yes, what more can you say? It looks like with no further questions coming in, we have drawn to a natural conclusion. Diana's just saying thank you, very useful. Thank you, Melanie. Similarly from Mina as well, thank you very much. So it just remains for me to give my thanks to Melanie for leading us through this position, and it will leave me with that fact about life expectancy for our youngest generations having turned a corner. A sobering fact indeed. So I shall sign off. This recording of this webinar will be available on the Alliance's YouTube channel from the middle of next week. And as we said earlier, if anybody is interested in registering for the resource pack, the information will be on that recording. Thank you very much, everybody. Goodbye.